My female supervisor accused me of harassment after I rejected her. It started on a Tuesday around 3:40 p.m. I remember the time because I just finished logging hours for the Anderson project and was debating whether to head to the break room or push through the last hour. I'd been at the company for 8 months, working as a data analyst under a senior supervisor named Rachel Klein. She was direct, competent, and known for being a bit sharp with people who didn't keep up. I respected her, even if she could be intense. That afternoon, she stopped by my desk. Not unusual. But this time, instead of the usual sharp check-in or spreadsheet critique, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink after work. She said it casually, almost like a joke. I hesitated, thinking she was being polite or sarcastic. I laughed a little, but she didn't. She just stood there with her coffee mug in both hands, waiting. "I'm good, thanks," I said, keeping it light. She gave me a short smile. "Sure, just thought I'd ask." She walked off, and I figured that was that. By Thursday, something had shifted, nothing obvious, just a tone. She stopped replying to my updates as quickly. During a meeting that afternoon, she cut me off mid-sentence to correct a detail, something we would normally talk about privately. My teammate Jordan raised an eyebrow at me across the table. I brushed it off. The following week, I was left off an email chain about deliverables. Minor, but weird. I had to ask Jordan to forward me the materials. Then on Friday, Rachel reassigned 2 of the reports I usually handled to someone else on the team. No explanation. She said she was trying to balance bandwidth, but I was already under capacity. I thought about asking her directly if something was up, but it felt awkward. I hadn't done anything wrong. Maybe I'd misread that drink thing entirely. Maybe she was just in a bad mood lately. It didn't really come to a head until a little over 2 weeks later. I was pulled into HR. Lisa from Employee Relations asked if I had a minute after lunch. I assumed it was a routine check-in or some admin update. Instead, I walked into a room with Lisa and another HR rep I didn't recognize. They closed the door behind me. They asked me to sit. Lisa kept her voice calm, professional. She said a concern had been raised about my conduct with a member of the leadership team. I blinked. What? She said there had been an allegation of inappropriate behavior directed toward my supervisor, that my comments and actions had made her feel uncomfortable in the workplace, that she'd felt pressured and disturbed by what she described as persistent attention and boundary crossing. My mouth went dry. I said I didn't understand. Lisa said they weren't making assumptions, but they needed to do due diligence, and I asked who filed the complaint. She didn't answer directly, but I already knew. I said, Rachel. Neither of them confirmed, but Lisa said the matter involved someone in my reporting line. I tried to explain. She asked me out. I said no. Lisa raised her hand slightly. We'll look into everything. For now, we're just asking for your cooperation. They asked if I'd ever commented on Rachel's appearance, if I'd sent her personal messages, if I'd ever waited for her after hours or made any suggestive remarks in meetings. I said no to everything, because I hadn't. They said they'd be temporarily reassigning me to a different supervisor during the review, that I shouldn't contact Rachel directly, that this was standard procedure. I walked out of that room with my hands cold and my brain moving in slow motion. By the time I got back to my desk, my calendar had already updated. My weekly one-on-one with Rachel was gone. A new invite from someone in business ops was in its place. I didn't go home right away that day. I sat in the stairwell on the 5th floor, where barely anyone ever went, and just stared at the concrete wall, trying to piece together what had just happened, wondering what exactly she'd said about me, and how I was supposed to prove it wasn't true. When I got home that night, I didn't tell anyone. I live alone in a small one-bedroom near the downtown bus loop, and the silence was the only thing that kept my head from spinning. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my work clothes, trying to think of what exactly had happened, and more importantly, why. Rachel and I never had any kind of personal relationship. We weren't friends. We didn't even chat that much outside of meetings. She gave me assignments. I finished them. I was always polite. I never made jokes about her or tried to cross any lines. If she joked, I kept my responses neutral. I remembered every interaction as stiffly professional, except that one moment. That afternoon, she asked me for a drink. Had I embarrassed her somehow by turning her down? I'd been friendly about it, not rude. It wasn't like I made a scene or reported her. I just said no. But something must have changed for her to go this far. You don't file a harassment complaint because someone declines a drink. The next few days were strange. My new supervisor, Daniel, clearly knew something had happened but didn't bring it up. He gave me tasks that felt like busy work. No real analysis, no deep dives, just spreadsheets to clean up and presentations to format. Stuff I hadn't touched since month 2 on the job. It felt like being placed in a holding pattern. People noticed. Jordan, who sat across from me, asked if I was okay. I told him I'd been moved around to help cover capacity. He nodded, didn't push. Rachel didn't even look at me. We passed each other once in the hallway near the elevators. She was laughing with someone from finance and then went dead silent when she saw me, like I wasn't supposed to be there. She turned her head and kept walking. I got a follow-up from HR the next Monday. They asked for any messages between me and Rachel, emails, Slack, text if we ever communicated outside work. We hadn't. I pulled everything. There was nothing personal, nothing off. Just lines like updated numbers attached and let me know if you need clarification on tab 3. Still, the fact that I was being investigated made me nervous in ways I couldn't explain. I found myself second-guessing things I'd said, even normal things. Had I ever complimented her presentation style? Could something innocent have been taken the wrong way? I kept my head down. I didn't go to lunch with the usual team that week. I avoided the main break room and used the smaller kitchen on the 4th floor, where people from accounting usually ate in silence. I told myself it would blow over once they reviewed everything. It didn't. On Thursday, I got called back to HR. This time it was just Lisa. She said the review was ongoing, but Rachel had now submitted a written statement with more detail. According to her, I'd lingered around her desk after hours. She said I made her uncomfortable during meetings by watching her in a way that felt invasive, that I once touched her shoulder while asking a question at her desk. None of that happened. I told Lisa plainly I had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't stay late unless there was a deadline, and even then, I was always out before Rachel. The only time I ever touched her was once, maybe 4 months ago, when I handed her a folder and she didn't see me coming. My hand might have grazed hers, if that. Lisa nodded, typing slowly as I spoke. She didn't accuse me of lying, but she didn't say I was being believed either. That night, I finally called someone, my brother Evan, who works in IT for a small logistics company upstate. I didn't tell him everything, just that my supervisor had made a claim and I was being investigated. He told me to get a lawyer if it got worse. I laughed and said I didn't even know where to start with that. After I hung up, I just sat in the dark for a long time. Not angry, not yet, just confused. It felt like I was stuck in the middle of a story someone else had written for me, one where I was playing a role I didn't sign up for. The scariest part wasn't even the accusation. It was how easy it was for everything to change. One word, one conversation I wasn't part of, and suddenly I was being watched. Frozen out. Treated like I might snap. I hadn't even done anything. All I did was say no. I didn't see the first real manipulation until it showed up in writing. It was a Wednesday morning, almost 3 weeks into the review. I came in at 8:45 and found an email already sitting in my inbox, marked high importance. It was from Lisa in HR. She said they had received new documentation related to the case and that I needed to review and confirm my response by end of day. Attached was a PDF, 4 pages, time-stamped, each section introduced with a short summary and then followed by screenshots of Slack messages. But the messages weren't from me, they were from a user named mcole01, my handle, but with different wording than anything I'd ever typed. Familiar format, familiar punctuation, even my usual emoji habits. But the sentences weren't mine. One said, "Stayed late again. Noticed you looked great in that blue dress today." Another, "Didn't want to say this in person, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Hope that's not too forward." I sat completely still. I felt the heat crawl up the back of my neck. My hands weren't even on the keyboard anymore. There was a message to Rachel timestamped 2 weeks before the investigation started. "Wish we could talk outside of work more. I feel like we're always skimming the surface." I never sent that. I never typed those words. But the formatting was perfect. My profile photo was there. The chat window looked real. Same colors, same timestamp format, even the light gray background of unread messages. I opened my Slack history in a browser and searched for the phrases. Nothing. They didn't exist in the actual logs, but the screenshots had been submitted as part of Rachel's complaint. I forwarded the email to Lisa immediately and said those messages weren't real. I offered to open my Slack account with IT to verify. She said she would make a note of my statement and thanked me for the quick response. Then I walked straight to IT. I knew Connor from the tech desk. He'd helped me reset my VPN when I got locked out a few months back. I told him I was trying to cross-reference Slack messages for a review and needed help pulling full history. He looked a little skeptical, but once I mentioned HR, he said he'd check with his supervisor and get back to me. By lunch, he sent me a zip folder with my full chat archive. I scrolled through every message I'd ever sent Rachel. Every single one. It was all work-related. The only time I even commented on her appearance was once months ago when she wore a company-branded jacket, and I said, "Those finally came in. Looks sharp." She replied with a thumbs up. That was it. I emailed Lisa again with the logs and attached the IT confirmation. No fake messages, no evidence that I'd said anything even close to what was in the PDF. I didn't get a reply until the next morning. Lisa said she appreciated the clarification and that HR would take all sources into consideration. Nothing about the screenshots being fake. No follow-up about how they got submitted. Later that day, Jordan pulled me aside in the stairwell. "Hey," he said, glancing around. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Rachel's been saying stuff about you," he said, "around the other leads, like offhand comments." I asked what kind of comments. "Like you were being obsessive, that she had to shut it down." She didn't say it outright, but she made it sound like you kept pushing things. My chest tightened. "She told anyone else?" He shrugged. "Not sure, I just heard it from Claire, thought you should know." I thanked him, went back to my desk. I don't even remember what I worked on that afternoon, just kept my head down, trying not to spiral. The thing is, once those fake messages were submitted, I realized it didn't matter what I said anymore. Rachel had figured out how to shift the ground under me. She didn't need facts. All she needed was doubt. And now there was evidence, fabricated or not, sitting in a file with my name on it. I didn't sleep the night after I saw those fake messages. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about every way this could end badly. My job wasn't guaranteed, my reputation was already slipping, and now there were fake logs in a file with my name on them, floating around in HR. The next morning, I emailed Lisa again. I asked directly, had the screenshots been verified? Had IT confirmed whether they were real or altered? I said I was willing to sit down with the IT team myself, or even escalate it to security if needed. Her response came late in the day. It was short. She said they were reviewing the matter with internal resources and would follow up when additional clarity is available. That was it. No timeline, no acknowledgement that something very serious had just been dropped in my lap. The silence from her wasn't the only thing that changed. A few people who used to talk to me, Nina from marketing, Adam from the UX team, started acting strange. I'd say hi in the break room and they'd nod but not really look at me. People I'd shared lunch tables with just a few weeks ago now avoided eye contact. The worst part was that Rachel acted like none of it touched her. I saw her in the hall a few times, always with someone else, always smiling, walking fast like she was too busy to notice me. She wasn't keeping quiet anymore either. Jordan said he heard from someone in operations that she was glad to have reported what she did, that she felt like she was setting a boundary. I started keeping notes, every weird look, every small assignment Daniel gave me that felt like a placeholder. I wrote down dates, times, anything that might help later. I didn't know if I'd need a lawyer, but I wanted something, anything that could prove I wasn't just paranoid. That Friday, I stayed late, not because of the investigation, because I needed to feel normal. I loaded a data set and just worked. Around 7:10 p.m., I was the only one left on the floor until I wasn't. I heard the elevator doors open, followed by the clack of heels on tile. I didn't turn around, I knew who it was. Rachel walked straight past my desk and into the kitchen. I glanced over. She poured herself water and then turned, acting surprised. "Oh," she said. "Didn't realize anyone was still here." I gave a short nod. "Just finishing up." She leaned on the kitchen counter, looking straight at me. "Long hours lately." I kept my voice neutral. "Trying to stay ahead." She stared at me a second longer, then shrugged and started walking toward the elevator. But right before she reached it, she turned back. I didn't expect you to take things so personally," she said. "It was just a conversation." I looked at her, trying to stay calm. "You submitted fake messages. That's not a conversation." She smiled, tight, thin. "You should be careful what you accuse people of, especially when you're already under review." Then she left. I sat there, frozen. Not out of fear, but out of disbelief. She was pushing it further now, and she wasn't even trying to hide it. The suggestion, the warning, the implied threat, it was all out in the open. That night, I emailed myself a detailed account of the interaction, word for word, as close as I could remember. I saved it to a private drive and backed it up on a USB. If she was going to escalate this, I needed to be ready. And she did escalate. The next Monday, I got a notice from HR requesting an interim conduct meeting. No explanation, just a date and time. When I walked in, Lisa was there again, but this time with someone new, a man in a suit introduced as Mark from Corporate Risk. He didn't shake my hand, he just gestured for me to sit. They told me another concern had been raised, this time about creating discomfort by remaining in the office after hours when others were present. Specifically, they said I'd stayed late and made an employee feel uneasy. I didn't even have to ask who. I told them she'd approached me, that she was the one who initiated conversation, that I said almost nothing. Mark didn't respond to that. He just asked if I understood the need to maintain a safe environment. It was clear. The walls were closing in. Rachel wasn't just building a case, she was setting traps. And unless I found a way to expose what she was doing, I was going to be buried under it. The proof came 2 days later, but not in the way I expected. I was at my desk just after 3:00 p.m., trying to finish a weekly metrics report that no one really seemed to care about. Most of my real responsibilities had been stripped away by then. Daniel barely gave me anything substantial anymore, and when he did, he double-checked everything like I was new to the job. Jordan pinged me on Slack. "Can you talk for a second? In person?" We met in the stairwell again, same place as before. He looked more serious this time, even nervous. He said, "I know I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think you need to see something." Then he pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was a screenshot from his own Slack, taken the night before, not of a message I sent, of one Rachel did. It was in a private thread between her and Claire, another team lead. Jordan had seen it by accident when Claire left her laptop unlocked during a meeting, and he was helping her fix a projector issue. The message Rachel sent read, "I'm not letting this guy make me look stupid. He crossed the line, and now he's playing the victim." Then another, "Honestly, I should have reported him months ago. I'll do whatever I need to make sure he doesn't walk away from this clean." The timestamps were recent, after the investigation had already started. I stared at Jordan. "You're sure that's real?" He nodded. "I took the photo in the room. Claire didn't see. I know this could blow back on me, but this whole thing doesn't sit right." I asked him to send me the image. He did, with a warning. "Don't say it came from me. Seriously." I went back to my desk and just sat there, looking at the photo. My heart was pounding. The language was clear. Rachel had an agenda. She was trying to ruin me on purpose, not out of fear or misunderstanding, but to protect her ego, to avoid the embarrassment of rejection. It wasn't enough, though. One screenshot from someone else's account wasn't going to overturn everything. I needed more, something irrefutable. I spent that night digging through every piece of Slack metadata I had access to, looking for inconsistencies, logs, anything that could prove the fake screenshots she'd submitted weren't part of any actual chat history. Then I remembered something. When you upload an image into Slack, even a screenshot, it logs metadata if the image was created locally. Not always visible, but traceable by file properties. If she doctored the images herself, then submitted them, the upload logs might show her as the original creator. I didn't have access to those logs, but I knew someone who might. Connor from IT. I waited until Thursday afternoon and went to see him. I didn't mention HR or the case. I just asked, "Hey, random question. If someone uploads an image in Slack, does it track who uploaded it and when?" He said, "Yeah, in the back-end logs, admin only." I pushed a little. "What about if someone submitted an image in an HR case that wasn't from the original conversation?" He paused, raised an eyebrow. "Why are you asking?" I said, "Because someone submitted doctored images with my name on them. And if I don't prove it soon, I could lose my job." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you know the channel or user it came from?" I told him the username the fake screenshots were attributed to, my handle, and gave him the date range from the PDF HR had shown me. He said he couldn't send me anything directly, but he'd look into it. The next morning, I got an email from him. No body text, just a PDF attachment labeled message log extract, internal use only. Inside were the Slack file metadata records, image submissions by Rachel, timestamps, upload IP address, hers. All the messages submitted to HR were images created and uploaded from her account. None of them matched any actual conversation threads. It was exactly what I needed. I sent the file to Lisa in HR with a short message. This shows that Rachel fabricated the screenshots submitted to your office. All were created and uploaded from her Slack account. I have confirmation from IT. This time she responded in under an hour. She said they were reviewing the materials and that the information provided raises serious concerns. They would follow up shortly. I don't know what happened behind the scenes after that. I wasn't in the room for whatever conversation happened between HR, IT, and legal, but I knew the moment I walked into the office the next Monday that something had changed. Rachel wasn't there. Her office was dark. Her nameplate was still up, but her desk was empty. By noon, a company-wide email went out saying she was no longer with the organization. No details, just like that. But it wasn't over, not for me, not even close. You'd think that once she was gone, it would feel like a win, or at least a relief, but that's not how it played out. The Monday Rachel didn't show up, and people acted like they were waiting for something to explode. No one said anything outright, but her absence left this weird silence in the air, like a dropped glass that hadn't hit the floor yet. I saw a few heads tilt toward her office when they walked by, like they couldn't believe it was really empty. Around 2:00 p.m., Daniel swung by my desk and said Lisa from HR wanted to meet again. It was supposed to be a final conversation, a closeout. Just procedure, he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it. Lisa looked tired when I stepped into her office. Not defensive, not apologetic, just tired. We've concluded the investigation, she said. Rachel Klein is no longer employed here. Effective immediately. I nodded once. We recognize that the documentation you submitted was credible and material to the decision. I'm sure this has been a difficult few weeks. It felt rehearsed. I didn't say anything. She went on telling me that no formal findings would be recorded against me and that my status with the company remained in good standing. She also added carefully that the company would not be issuing a public correction or statement about what had occurred. No statement? I asked. Lisa shook her head. We treat these matters as confidential for everyone involved. But people already think I did something. I was pulled from my team, investigated. Is that just left to sit? Her eyes flicked to the side. We understand this situation has had a significant impact. If there are issues with your working environment moving forward, we encourage you to raise them. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement that someone tried to destroy my reputation. No public correction, just a quiet termination in a closed file. I left her office and walked straight past my desk. I didn't even grab my bag. I went outside and stood in the cold, just staring at the sidewalk. Rachel was gone, but the damage wasn't. The rumor didn't die with her. A week later, Jordan told me that Claire, who'd been close with Rachel, was still hinting to people that the case had been messy, that something probably happened even if they couldn't prove it. Someone else from another department asked me if I was okay now, with this careful look like they didn't know whether to believe the worst or feel sorry for me. I said, I'm fine, but I wasn't. People stopped trusting me. Or maybe they were just afraid to be seen trusting me. Either way, it was isolation, slow and constant. Meetings where I used to get asked for input turned into quiet nods while someone else wrapped up. Slack threads I used to be included on went dead. I got a few pity messages when Rachel was let go, people who probably never liked her much anyway, but nothing that felt real. And I was different too. I started watching everything I said, every message I typed. I read 3 times before hitting send. Every hallway conversation I kept short. I stopped joining team lunches because I didn't want to sit across from people who thought I might have been capable of what she accused me of. The worst part wasn't that she tried to ruin me. It was how easy it was for people to believe her. One accusation, no evidence, just a story, told with the right tone by someone higher up. And suddenly everything about me was questioned. My intentions, my professionalism, my presence in the room. Even after I cleared my name, the suspicion didn't vanish. It just got quieter. People treated me like I was something that had narrowly been contained, like a crisis that passed but might still come back. And I hated that. I hated walking into rooms and knowing some people had once imagined me as someone dangerous. I hated knowing Rachel got to leave without facing what she really did. And I hated feeling like survival was supposed to count as justice, because it didn't. About 3 weeks after Rachel's departure, I was called into another meeting, not with HR this time, but with one of the senior directors, Michelle Chen. Michelle had never interacted with me much before. She was above my chain of command, someone I only ever saw during quarterly meetings or when she walked the floor during major rollouts. So when I saw her name on a calendar invite titled Follow-Up Discussion Workplace Integration, I didn't know what to expect. She met me in one of the glass conference rooms on the 12th floor. She had a notepad, but it stayed closed the whole time. I wanted to speak with you directly, she said, because I think you deserve that. She didn't smile, but she wasn't cold either. Just direct. She said she'd reviewed the findings herself, that she'd spoken with HR, IT, and legal. She didn't go into detail, but it was clear she knew everything, or enough. Then she told me something I hadn't expected to hear. I think it's going to be difficult for you to continue in your current role, not because of anything you've done, but because of how the team dynamics have shifted. That's something we can't ignore. I asked, so what happens now? She said they were offering me 2 options. Option 1, stay on the team, remain under Daniel's supervision, and try to rebuild trust organically with a performance review after 6 months. Option 2, transfer to a different division, product data under a new supervisor, new team, and with the possibility of lateral promotion after 90 days, if things went well. She said it wasn't punishment, that this was about long-term success and managing exposure. I didn't reply right, so wait. I just sat there, letting it sink in that even though I'd done nothing wrong, I was still the one being moved. Michelle added, to be blunt, the people who formed an opinion early haven't let it go. I've seen it happen before. It isn't fair, but it's real. I took the transfer. 2 weeks later, I was working on the 7th floor with a new title, Data Systems Analyst 2. The title didn't mean much, just a slight pay bump and a vague shift in responsibility, but it gave the move a veneer of normalcy. The people were polite. My new supervisor, Angela, didn't seem to care about anything except getting work done. She welcomed me with a short onboarding and then let me settle in. She didn't ask about what had happened upstairs. Either she didn't know or she was good at pretending not to. But the fallout didn't stop at the office. One morning, I got a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter I'd spoken to 6 months earlier. She said she'd heard something went down at my company and asked if I was still open to new roles. I asked where she heard that. She didn't say, just said she picked up on some chatter. I declined politely. Then a few days later, a friend from college who worked at another tech firm sent me a text. Hey, is it true you got reported at your job? Someone from your company was talking about it at a meetup. That's when I realized it had spread beyond the walls. Rachel may have been gone, but the version of me she'd created, the rumor, the label, the suspicion, that was still moving through rooms I hadn't even stepped into. It was like a shadow I couldn't pull away from. I stopped going to networking events, stopped updating my profile, stopped replying to messages from people I hadn't talked to in a while. I didn't trust how anyone saw me anymore, not unless I could control every word, every setting, every tone. And even then, it didn't always matter. Outside work, I tried to keep it together. My weekends shrank down to groceries, errands, quiet walks around the neighborhood. I stopped dating. I stopped going out at all, really. I told myself I was just tired, that I needed time. But the truth was, I didn't feel safe being seen. At work, I performed. I delivered reports early. I cleaned up dashboards that hadn't been touched in months. I volunteered for low visibility projects to stay busy. Angela gave me good feedback. But I knew what it was. Survival. Not growth. Not connection. Just staying functional. Once in the kitchen, a guy from my old department saw me and did a double take. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, then just nodded and walked away. That's what it had become. A series of pauses, of hesitations, of doors that didn't quite close but would never fully open again. I had my name cleared, but no one was going to fix what it cost me. It wasn't until months later that I realized how much of myself I died. Lost without even noticing. I wasn't angry all the time. That would have been easier to spot. It was something else, this constant low-grade tension in my chest, like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I started second-guessing things I never used to think about. Every joke I told in a meeting, every time I stood too close to someone in the elevator, every email I sent that included the word hey. I read them twice before hitting send. Then I read them again after they went out, just in case. And I noticed how I avoided mirrors. At first I thought it was just a habit, rushing out the door in the morning, skipping the bathroom mirror at work. But one day I caught myself in the reflection of the subway window and I didn't recognize my own face. My jaw was tighter. My eyes were dull. I looked like someone who didn't trust anyone, including himself. Angela, my new manager, kept praising my reliability. She said I was one of the most consistent people on her team. But she didn't know it came from fear, from needing control, from not being able to afford another misstep, even when I hadn't made. I started keeping a private folder on my work computer labeled backlog, but it wasn't project files. It was evidence of screenshots of messages, copies of emails, time-stamped notes about meetings, just in case someone ever tried to pull something again. I knew how fast everything could flip. I wasn't going to be unprepared twice. My personal life thinned out too. I stopped responding to group chats unless someone messaged me directly. When friends invited me to dinner, I made excuses. Work, headaches, family stuff. Eventually, they stopped asking. My brother Evan noticed. He called me one weekend, a few months after the transfer, like, you sound, I don't know, hollow, he said. I told him I was fine. He didn't push, but I could hear the silence on the other end of the line stretch a little too long. He said, you didn't do anything wrong. I said, I know, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was I'd started living like someone who had. I didn't trust compliments anymore. Didn't trust new people. Every time someone smiled at me during a meeting or held the elevator door, a part of me wondered if they knew. If they'd heard it, or if they were testing me. I couldn't unlearn that suspicion. Even when I started seeing a therapist, quiet office, 3 floors up from a bookstore, recommended by a friend. I didn't know what to say at first. I just sat there, listing events like bullet points, like I was reporting a neutral series of facts. She asked me, and how did you feel during all of that? I didn't know. I said, like I was being erased. She nodded, wrote something down, then asked, Kate, do you still feel that way? I didn't answer, because yes, I did. I was still showing up to work, still hitting deadlines, still doing everything right. But I was smaller now in ways I didn't know how to explain. I didn't joke with people like I used to. I didn't offer opinions unless asked. I didn't linger anywhere, not at work, not in conversations, not in places where someone might wonder why I was still standing there. The worst part was knowing that if I ever did get back to feeling normal, whatever that meant, it wouldn't be because someone fixed it for me. There was no apology coming, no memo to clear the air, no coworker who would suddenly say, we were wrong. If I wanted to be okay again, I'd have to build that from scratch, and I didn't know yet if I could. The decision to leave started as a quiet thought, not dramatic, not a reaction to anything new, just a shift. Like realizing a coat you've worn every day doesn't fit anymore. One morning I sat down at my desk, logged in, opened my inbox, and felt nothing. Not boredom, not frustration, just emptiness. That same day, Angela dropped by my desk to ask if I'd be willing to train one of the newer analysts on the Tableau dashboards I'd built. I said yes, of course. Then I spent the rest of the afternoon writing notes I knew I shouldn't have needed to write. Because somewhere in me, I already knew I wasn't going to be around much longer. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even Evan. I didn't update my resume or talk to recruiters. I just sat with the idea for a while. Could I really leave after everything I'd pushed through? Wouldn't that mean Rachel still won in a way? But that line of thinking didn't hold up. She was gone. The job was still here, but I wasn't. Not fully. And I didn't want to keep showing up as a version of myself that had been shaped by fear and damage. The night I made the decision, I didn't sleep. I watched the digital clock by my bed crawl past 1 o'clock a.m., 2:30, 3:15. Around 4 o'clock, I got up, sat at my kitchen table, and opened a blank document. The resignation letter came out simple, one paragraph, no flourishes. I thanked Angela for the opportunity, said I'd be willing to help with the transition, gave 3 weeks notice. I didn't send it right away. I waited 3 days. Then on a Thursday morning, I attached the letter to an email, stared at the screen for 5 minutes, and hit send before I could change my mind. Angela responded an hour later. She was surprised but professional. She asked if I wanted to talk. I agreed. We met in a small glass room overlooking the courtyard. She didn't ask why I was leaving exactly, just if it was for another role. I told her no, not yet. I said it was just time to move on. She watched me for a second, then nodded. Fair enough. Later that day, a few coworkers came by my desk to say they'd heard the news. They wished me well, asked if I had something lined up. I gave the same answer to all of them. Not yet, just taking a break. Jordan was the only one who looked like he understood. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "You did what you had to do," and gave me a pat on the shoulder before heading back to his desk. The final days went by quickly. I turned over files, cleaned up documentation, handed off responsibilities. People who'd avoided me months earlier suddenly became friendly again. Not warm, just polite, in a way that told me they didn't feel awkward anymore. Because soon I'd be someone they didn't have to think about. On my last day, there was no send-off, no cake in the break room, just a few goodbyes, a quick handshake from Angela, and a tap of my badge on the security gate as I left the building for the last time. I walked outside, stood at the corner, waiting for the light to change, and didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but in a way that made sense, because this was the part no one ever talks about. Not the fear, not the damage, not even the decision to leave. It's what comes after. It's walking away without applause. It's leaving behind something you didn't break but couldn't repair. It's choosing peace over proof, even if no one ever really says you were right. I didn't do anything for the first month. I slept late, took long walks through the neighborhoods I never had time to explore when I was working, and let my days stay unstructured. No alarms, no meetings, no unread Slack messages waiting for me the second I woke up. Just space. It felt strange at first, not because I missed the job, I didn't, but because I wasn't used to the quiet. My mind had been in survival mode for so long that even silence felt like something I had to defend myself against. I kept waiting for some kind of aftershock, an email, a call, someone resurfacing to ask questions, but it never came. Rachel was gone. The company had moved on, and now so had I. I didn't rush into a new job. I told myself I'd wait until I wanted something again, instead of chasing the next position just to feel stable. I'd saved enough to get by for a while, and for once I let that be enough. My brother checked in every weekend. I kept my replies honest but short. I wasn't in the mood to explain myself. One night, about 6 weeks after I left, I ran into someone from the old office, Claire, the one Rachel had been messaging during the investigation. I saw her at a bookstore near downtown in the nonfiction section. She did a double take when she noticed me and gave a hesitant wave. We talked for maybe 2 minutes, polite, careful. She asked how I was doing. I said I was fine. Then she said something that stuck with me. I guess things got really complicated back then. I looked at her. They didn't feel complicated from my side. She didn't respond to that, just gave me a small, polite smile and said, "Well, I hope things are better now." I said thanks and left it there. And that's what it became. Small encounters with people who wanted to acknowledge what happened without ever really confronting it. People who knew parts of the story, but didn't want to hold any of it too closely. I stopped expecting anyone to. It wasn't theirs to carry. I started seeing the therapist more regularly. The first few sessions were quiet. Then I started talking, not just about what Rachel did, but about how it rewired me, about how quickly I'd learned to monitor myself, to act harmless, to keep my head down even when I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And then eventually about how I wanted to stop doing that. It's not like something unlocked overnight, but I did begin applying for jobs again. Slowly, carefully. I was more deliberate this time, more interested in finding a place where I didn't have to constantly prove my worth just to be safe. I got a few interviews, then a few offers. I took one at a smaller firm, less money, but a better environment, no massive hierarchy, no one treating the office like a battlefield, just a team that worked and went home and didn't blur the lines. I didn't tell them about what had happened. I didn't have to. It wasn't who I was. It was something I lived through. That's the difference I started to understand. I used to think being cleared meant I could go back to the person I was before, but you don't go back. You absorb it. You learn how to carry it without letting it take over. Now, when I walk into the office, I don't flinch when someone says my name. I don't reread my messages 10 times. I don't keep a secret folder of receipts on my desktop. I still keep boundaries. I still pay attention, but I'm not scared all the time. That's what survival looks like. Not clean, not cinematic, just slow, steady choices to live without that weight pressing down on everything. Rachel tried to bury me with a story, but I'm still here.